Hello, I'm Russell Haythorn with Denver 7, and welcome to Denver Decides. This community partnership is dedicated to accessible and transparent elections. The partnership includes the League of Women Voters of Denver, Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, and is presented by Denver 8 TV. Our mission today is to present a ballot issue forum in anticipation of the general election coming up on Tuesday, November 3rd. Among the numerous amendments and ordinance questions on this year's ballot is referred Measure 2J. This measure asks, shall the voters of the City and County of Denver adopt an ordinance authorizing the city to grant a provisional permit to owners or keepers of a pit bull, provided the owner microchips the animal and complies with additional requirements set by Denver Animal Protection. Our format for this forum usually follows a basic debate outline with opening and closing statements, cross-examination, and responses to those questions, and also responses to questions submitted by the forum organizers. However, I need to advise our viewers here that you will be asked to vote yes or no for this measure on the ballot. We will be modifying the format of this forum a bit since the person set to speak in favor of the measure chose not to participate. There are opposing points of view on this measure, which can be found in the Blue Book Guide to the ballot. So let's begin by meeting the participant who is here tonight and who is opposed to referred measure 2J. At my right is Paul Varanis, a parent and community organizer. And Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Russell.
We appreciate it, and I hope I got that last name right.
Nailed it.
Okay. Well, Paul, we'll begin with your opening statement.
Thank you. 34 years ago, a 3-year-old boy named Fernando Salazar was fatally attacked by a pit bull in Denver. At that time, the city reacted to this and a series of other pit bull attacks by instituting the ban on pit bulls that currently exists today. The ban was put in place because we as a city decided that one life lost was one life too many in exchange for the privilege of owning a pit bull in Denver. The current ban on pit bulls is far from perfect, but it has done its job in preventing any additional murders from a pit bull attack. Not a single life lost needlessly in 34 years. There are several problems with the 2J proposed ballot measure, but the biggest problem is that it is built upon the magical assumption that pit bull owners will follow the law and register their pets. The City of Denver's pet registration rate is a measly 20%. Even if this pit bull registration would make Denver safer, which I don't think that it will do, the fact that 80% of Denverites do not and will not register their pets makes this whole scheme not worth the paper that it is written on. Our mayor doesn't believe the city can keep people safe with Measure 2J, and I agree with him, which is why I urge you to vote no.
Paul, thank you for that opening statement. And now we'll move on to questions submitted by the organizers of this forum. And I have several questions here for you tonight. The first is on the negative stigma of the pit bull breed. Is there any data that supports the negative stigma of the pit bull breed versus other breeds from the past 5 years or so in Denver, or for that matter, in the country?
There is a wealth of studies and information that is available. And there's two ways that studies have typically measured the level of safety related to pit bulls and other dogs. One is the rate of bites, and the other is the rate of bites related to fatalities. In both of those categories, pit bull or pit bull type dogs rank at the top of the list. They're pretty close as it relates to the bite rate. But as it relates to dog-related bites that led to the death of humans or fatalities, they are nearly double of the next category of dog. And that's can be found in a comprehensive report from the Vet Med today.
Paul, thanks for that response. Card question number 2, and we're talking about fines for non-compliance. If 2J is to pass, what would be a reasonable fine amount for non-compliance?
The fine compliance question assumes that we have the mechanisms in place to address and report on pit bulls that aren't registered. We don't currently have the mechanisms, the head count, the people in place to sufficiently and accurately respond to calls and questions related to pit bulls, and there's no way for people to even know if a pit bull is going to be microchipped and registered. So I don't have an answer to that question. I don't think that any amount of fine is short of one that's extremely large is going to be useful, as today the fines don't make an impact in the 20% compliance, 80% non-compliance rate.
You're just hoping that it doesn't get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul, moving on, this is on mixed breed permits. What percentage of pit bull breeding would be required in mixed breeds before a provisional permit would be required to scientifically confirm the look of a pit bull?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so mixed breeding, if you have a dog, that is a mix between a pit bull and something else, could a provisional permit be granted in those cases, I guess?
That's not up to me. I don't believe that a provisional permit should be passed. So the premise of the question.
You would be against that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. If that's a basis, if that's a line item in a conditional provision in this ballot measure, I don't agree with the ballot measure, so I don't agree with that question.
Makes sense. Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to remind our viewers here that you will be asked to vote yes or no for this measure on the ballot. We are modifying the format of this forum a bit since the person set to speak in favor of Measure 2J chose not to participate in this debate. There are opposing points of view, obviously, on this measure, which can be found in the Blue Book Guide to the ballot. But we are lucky enough to be joined by Paul. He's a parent and a community organizer, I believe. Yep. Community member for sure. And Paul is discussing the idea of a pit bull ban and I guess that pit bull ban being reversed. So we'll move on to the next question. If a female pit bull gives birth to more than one puppy, how long would the owner be able to keep the puppies before they are in non-compliance of the ordinance?
Yeah, again, I don't agree with the ordinance, so we don't have the details of that. So again, a good question. Don't have the answer to that. The councilman that is an advocate for this bill, Councilman Herndon, is not here to explain those answers. We've never had any town halls or open communication to answer these questions. So I'm someone that I don't have the answer to that.
And under the current ban, it would be a moot point anyway, right?
Right.
Explain that.
They're not allowed.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple.
I appreciate that. Two-part question next, and this is on euthanization. Should any dog be euthanized after one or two severe bites on an adult or a child under 18, or for that matter, biting another dog? And should a child's incident be more severe in penalty than an adult bite or, a dog biting another dog?
Again, because I don't agree with this measure, I'm not going to answer that question specifically, but I do think the euthanization of dogs and pit bulls is part of the story that I'd like to address. And when the ban first happened 34 years ago, it was a very sad story. There were a lot of pit bulls that were euthanized, people were separated with their dogs in a very sad way. And I think that fact is one of the drivers for why it's so important that we do this right. We follow the right safety and precaution measures to prevent those bites. And right now, this bill is just a tracking and a microchip process, of which 80% of people aren't going to do it anyways. So I'd say let's look at the prevention and why dogs bite, and let's have a comprehensive bill that addresses that, so that isn't something that happens.
I'm going to ask you to go back to the points you were making about other breeds and comparing those breeds to the pit bull. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason other aggressive breeds such as Chihuahuas, Rottweilers, and German Shepherds would not be included in this ordinance? And sort of take us through some of that research that you've found.
Yeah, There's sort of two questions here. One is the pit bull ban that is on the books a good law, and is it the only law, and should it stay there? I don't think that it's a perfect law. I think it's done its job in keeping people safe. Is this replacement law 2J a better option? I don't think it is. As it relates to the bite data, advocates for the repeal of the ban have numerous studies that show that the bites are pretty similar. I think that one data point that I have here is that Dr. Fagan, was a veterinary doctor at a February City Council meeting, said that 22.5% of the bites came from mixed breed, 21% came from Pit bulls are responsible for 22.5% of the bites, mixed breeds 21%, and German Shepherds at 17.8%. So the bite rates were pretty similar in this study, but as it relates to the fatalities, they were significantly higher, 118 by pit bulls and then 67 by Rottweilers in the next category.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Moving on. Is there any evidence that there are fewer pit bulls in Denver, in the city and county of Denver, as a result of the current ordinance?
Though that has not been tracked to the best of my knowledge, I don't think that the city has tracked that recently.
Why are people better served by the ordinance in place?
They're better served by the ordinance in place because pit bulls have shown to cause higher levels of fatality and death, and so as a result of that, the ban has prevented that. So, there's been no deaths in 35 years. Every week, you can find a new child or senior that was murdered by a pit bull somewhere in this country, and that hasn't happened here. So, if you want to look at it from that one element of saving lives, it's done that.
I'm going to move on to your closing statement. Thank you for answering those questions from the forum organizers. And again, just reiterating to the viewers who are watching, we asked a gentleman to argue in favor of this measure. He chose not to be here with us, and so Paul is here arguing against the measure, Measure 2J. And so, Paul, we'll let you go with your closing statement. We'll let you have a bit more than 1 minute.
Sounds good. Thanks, Russell. And thank you for listening to this debate. I know it's emotionally charged on both ends, and we want a solution that's going to work for all people and keep people safe. I'd urge you to vote no because you know that there's a huge disregard for the existing pet laws in the books here in Denver. A 20% pet registration rate is terrible. We must improve our compliance with current pet laws before extending additional privileges. Vote no because you know that the promise of increased safety with this bill is far from a sure thing, and why no elected official is willing to stick their neck out and publicly debate this topic tonight. And finally, vote no because you agree with the highly accredited annual animal behavior Dr. Ariel Fagan. Dr. Fagan testified during the City Council debate about the importance of including education, responsible ownership, and leash laws in legislation related to legalizing pit bulls. You know that none of these things that Dr. Fagan called for are meaningfully addressed in this bill. The pit bull ban may not be perfect, but 2J is worse. Vote no, and let's work together to come up with a comprehensive approach for a pet regulation compliance that opens up a path for responsible owners and pit bulls to reintroduce to Denver. Thank you.
Paul, way to go. And
Thank
you
you.
kept it under a minute. Hey, thank you very much for participating. We appreciate it. We think it serves, obviously, the voters well. So thank you very much.
I appreciate the forum and your work.
Yeah, on behalf of the forum organizers, we thank you as well.
Sounds
So,
good.
again, referred measure 2J asks, shall the voters in the city and county of Denver adopt an ordinance authorizing the city to grant a provisional permit to owners or keepers of a pit bull, provided the owner microchips the animal and complies with additional requirements set by Denver Animal Protection? Our thanks also to the Denver Decides partners, which include Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation and the League of Women Voters of Denver. Denver Decides is presented by Denver 8 TV. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Let your voice be heard, be sure you're registered, and get out there and vote. For complete election information online, go to denverdecides.org. I'm Russell Haythorn with Denver 7. Thank you for joining us.